Private military contractors. Well, President Trump's decision to pardon 4 American security guards involved in the infamous Blackwater massacre has horrified survivors of this 2007 incident. The guards were private military contractors with Blackwater, convicted of killing 14 of the 17 people when they opened fire in Baghdad. 2 of the youngest victims were just 9 and 11 years old. One man lost his mother and his son in the killings. As CNN's Barbara Starr reports, survivors call Trump's pardons shocking and disappointing.
It is one of the darkest episodes of the U.S. war in Iraq. 17 unarmed Iraqi civilians were shot to death in 2007 in a Baghdad traffic circle, including 9 and 11-year-old boys. A team of Blackwater private security contractors later convicted in the killing of 14 of them. The group had been notified of a nearby car bomb as their convoy moved into a traffic circle. Witnesses said they then opened fire on men, women, and children. President Trump last night turning the page by pardoning 4 of the contractors.
I was absolutely disgusted to hear about the pardons because the work that we had done in Iraq was so important, especially when it came to dealing with the local population.
The full pardons went to Nicholas Slayton, who was serving a life sentence for murder. Paul Slough, Evan Liberty, and Dustin Hurd were serving sentences between 12 and 15 years for manslaughter.
This is a reprehensible decision that basically throws the rule of law out the window on a presidential whim.
The Iraqi Foreign Ministry quickly reacting, saying the president's pardons ignored the dignity of the victims and the feelings and rights of their families. Many Iraqis have long felt the incident showed Americans did not value Iraqi lives. Among those killed were a doctor, a used car salesman, a truck driver, a businessman, an Iraqi soldier, a gardener, a taxi driver, and an aspiring doctor taking his mother to an appointment, according to prosecutors. Getting the convictions took years. In 2009, a federal judge dismissed the case due to misuse of statements, but then Vice President Joe Biden renewed the commitment to prosecute.
A dismissal, I want to make clear, is not an acquittal. And today, I'm announcing that the United States government will appeal this decision.
Now, the testimony from Iraqi witnesses at the eventual trial was truly harrowing, one saying they killed everyone. Pamela.
All right, Barbara Starr, thank you for that. Now let's bring in CNN's Arwa Damon, who covered the massacre for CNN.
At least 14 civilians lost their lives that day. The youngest, 9-year-old Ali, shot in the head in the back seat of the car as his father helplessly watched him die. My son was the heart of our family, Muhammad Abdul Razzaq says.
And Arwa joins us now. Arwa, explain for our viewers just how devastating this massacre was.
It was absolutely gutting, Pamela. You have to remember, we're talking Baghdad 2007, so it was already a city that was wrought with violence. But on the particular day in September that this happened, the sun was out, and it seemed as if people could sort of disillusion themselves for just a little bit, that their lives weren't as wretched as they actually were. And then, seemingly almost out of the blue, these bullets start flying at Al-Nusur Square. One person described it as if in an instant, the streets just turned into streets of blood. Eyewitnesses have said that, they tried to turn their vehicles around, they tried to get away, but the bullets just kept on coming. It was an incident that devastated those who lost loved ones, those who managed to survive, but also the country as a whole. The levels of anger that existed in the aftermath of this between the Iraqi population and the American one were quite significant. There was so much tension that emerged between the Iraqi and the U.S. governments in the wake of all of this. And Iraqis really had to wait a long time to actually get a semblance of justice. And it's worth noting, too, that these security companies, the vast majority of them, they acted with impunity, because remember back then they had immunity and they would just barrel through the streets, guns blazing, forcing vehicles off the road. This was hardly the first time that something like this happened. Many of them were very trigger happy with the company Blackwater being among the worst offenders. But this really brought a lot of anger and pain to the forefront for a lot of Iraqis.
And you've been talking to survivors of the massacre. What else are you hearing from them about these pardons?
Well, Pamela, a number of the survivors that we've actually been talking to were ones who traveled to the U.S. to testify. And for many of them, that whole experience, especially coming 7 years after the massacre took place, helped to a certain degree renew their faith in American ideals. But here's what one lawyer who was shot himself 3 times, whose name is Hassan Jabir Salman, had to say. He said, the American justice system is known to be a fair system, but it turns out that the American justice system is not fair. He said it is not fair because of these pardons that took place, because President Trump pardoned murderers. Another person who we spoke to was pleading with President Trump to not release these men, to not allow them to go free, because he said they were the ones who were terrorists. There's a lot of shock today in Iraq, and in fact beyond, because of what has just taken place. A lot of, as you heard in Barbara's package there, people being reminded of something that they have felt for a very, very long time, and that is that Americans, they really just don't value Iraqi life.
All right, Arwa Damon, thank you for your